You're listening to the YWAM Nashville podcast. My name's Cody.
My name's Michael, and we'll be your hosts for this season. Welcome to episode 6. We are boiling hot because our AC broke, and it's warmer in our house than it is actually even outside.
Yeah, because we live upstairs.
Hi. So it's gonna be nice and sweaty.
Yep. This is the sauna session.
Yeah.
Episode 6 sauna session.
Dun, dun, dun. So
today we've got Pat here with us.
Hello.
How you doing, Pat?
It is hot in here.
Yeah,
It is.
just a bit.
'Tis, and it's only gonna get worse.
Well, other than that, I'm fine.
Yeah, great.
You've got me in the most comfortable chair in the house. I'm happy.
Yeah, true that.
Good.
Pat
Hey.
is
Gotta be a good host, you know.
true that. Pat is the personnel director.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have? I know you wear a lot of hats around here.
I like to call myself the manager of various things.
Yeah, perfect. Pat makes
Just-
the things happen.
Sometimes.
So today, instead of the current event challenge session, we couldn't really. Sometimes it's hard to find a whole lot of current events every week. So
Yeah, our original intention for the current events anyways was more like we almost on the weekly just hear about like pressing needs or awesome testimonies that are just happening around the world because people here are like plugged in and stuff and they're like, did you hear? And I'm like,
yeah.
cool.
Tell me more.
So I was like, we gotta share that stuff, you know. But
Did you
nothing-
hear? Brazil's the new epicenter for COVID-19.
Is it really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there's some
Crazy.
current events.
We were just sharing last week about how Brazil's been like experiencing all kind of revival for the past few years. So
That is awesome.
yeah.
That is awesome.
Hopefully, there's a revival and healings and all that
Yeah,
kind of
right.
craziness.
Like all over the world, brothers.
It's great. But
Well, there's a bit of current events for you.
that being said, we also thought it would be cool to like talk about the YWAM values because they're like so important to us as an organization, and this is the YWAM Nashville podcast. So today we thought we would do the first and second values, which are kind of like our core underlying principles, which are knowing God and making him known. And Michael's got a little sheet over there if you want to just fill us in.
Yep, so this is what it says on ywam.org. Number 1, know God. YWAM is committed to know God, his nature, his character, and his ways. We seek to reflect who he is in every aspect of our lives and ministry. The automatic overflow of knowing and enjoying fellowship with God is the desire to share him with others, which leads to number 2, make God known. YWAM is called to make God known throughout the whole world and into every arena and society through evangelism, training, and mercy ministries. We believe that salvation of souls should result in transformation of societies, thus obeying Jesus' command to make disciples of all nations. Actually, I wanted to note also, as we start going through these, most of them, if not pretty much all of them, are like basic Christian values,
Yeah.
which I always thought
Or
was
should
kinda
be, at
funny.
least.
Yeah.
Pretty much just what our leadership over time has decided is how to be a Christian and be in relationship with God and like what should motivate everything that we do as missionaries.
But
And
the
I'm-
thing you have to remember, and this is key, is that every one of these foundational values is scripturally based.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Oh,
not
yeah.
just something that we pulled out of our ears over time. It's like, okay, the Bible says this. How do we walk this out? And how do we show people that this is important?
Come on.
It's a very good point.
So I think to sum up the values here, it's just know God, be in intimacy. We talked about intimacy before, but
Yeah.
in some of the other episodes, but like everything stems from a place of trusting in God. And in order to trust somebody, you have to get to know them. You have to know what they're like, who they are. So that way you put your confidence in that. And then I like how this says the automatic overflow, like the fruit of knowing the Lord is sharing him with others.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just go hand in hand, like they're not
Yeah.
separable. And so,
Sweet.
so those YWAM values number 1 and 2. Numbers 1 and 2. English.
Today's episode brought to you by YWAM Values 1 and 2. Knowing
that.
God and making him known.
Through that. All right. Insert epic theme song here
Oh no.
that I need to make.
Here it comes.
Dad jokes with Cody.
All right. Are you guys ready?
I was born
Oh,
ready.
Lord, no.
Why can't you run through a campsite? You can only ran because it's past tense. Get it?
Oh, yes. I think I'm going to lock you in a closet with Dave for a week.
That would only make us worse.
Yes, I know.
There's just like a black hole of dad jokeness that like implodes the
Puns.
whole world.
Word plays, all of that stuff. All of it.
It's great. Love Dave.
Right on. There's that.
There's that. As per every week. Right. So, Pat.
Cody.
So you've been to Asia. I don't know where else you've been, but if you could just fill us in a little bit.
Primarily Asia. I spent 12 years in a country that is hostile to the gospel.
Wow.
And I've been to Asian countries that were a little more friendly just on short visits.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So how did take us to the beginning? Like,
yeah.
how did you get a call to missions, and what did that look like? Because we are a missions organization, and I think oftentimes we kind of take for granted that, like, I don't know, that all these missionaries that live overseas like have like starting points and stories of their own, you know. So
yeah.
hit us up.
Okay, stories. I was working at State Farm insurance companies.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was working in their customer response center. I was fairly good at my job, but the kind of job I was doing for State Farm, the customer response center is not. It's valuable. It's a good experience, but you don't want to be there for more than a year.
Mm.
It is an entry-level position, and you need to get out as soon as there's an opening for you to get out. Because the job itself is very emotionally difficult.
Oh yeah.
Because you're taking phone calls from people who are at their worst. Like the worst possible thing has just happened to them, and you're talking to them.
Yeah, I worked at a theme park and at a concessions office, and the concessions office was right behind customer relations. So I heard some things.
Well, if you count, I spent many, many years in customer service of different kinds, including food service. And I can tell you right now, be nice to those people.
Oh, yeah.
They never, ever see anyone at their best. And I make it a point when I go out now, it's like, oh, I'm going to be your best friend for this 30 seconds that you're taking care of me.
Yeah.
Because I know how bad your day is.
Yeah.
But I was working for State Farm, and I'd had kind of a rough go coming to faith. And once I came to Jesus, it was like, okay, now what do you want me to do? This isn't it.
Yeah.
You would never ask me to do anything that would be such a drag on my mental well-being. And at that point, I met a singer who was from a YWAM base in Arkansas. And it was kind of like getting hit in the head with a brick.
How so?
Just that, this is what I have to do.
Yeah. You're like, this is
I
a
have to go
thing.
do this. This is a thing. I can do this. Really made my family upset with me. We're okay now.
What aspect of it? was challenging for your family?
Me leaving my job at State Farm.
Ah, did you make decent money or something, or was it?
It was a job that paid.
It was a
It,
job.
it was a job that paid. I had benefits. After being a manager at McDonald's, this was considered a step up from fast food.
Yeah.
Being
Yeah.
entry level.
I understand.
Being entry level at State Farm is considered a step up from being a manager in fast food in my mother's eyes. I won't say that out loud because I really enjoyed being a manager for McDonald's. It was one of the most valuable life experiences I've ever had.
Wow.
And the
Right
people
on.
I worked for and with were outstanding. Just outstanding. But yeah, my mom and dad were really upset that I was giving up security. I get that. Totally get it.
Yeah.
There are times when I kind of wish I still had regular pay and benefits.
Oh, I'm right there with you.
So I went and I did a DTS, Discipleship Training School. Then I did a School of Evangelism, which people aren't doing much anymore. I don't know of any bases that are actively doing schools of evangelism. Which ironically was the first school that YWAM did, was a School of Evangelism. But the people that were coming in were in such need of discipleship, they kind of did a prequel school to that, and that's the Discipleship Training School.
Yeah.
And then I joined the staff at that base. Weird things happened that I'm not going to get into on this podcast, and I came to Nashville in 2002.
Wow.
Because I knew that YWAM Nashville would be sending people to a particular Asian country that I wanted to go to. The story of me hearing that was kind of amusing. Standing in the shower. And I hear very clearly the name of the country. And I'm
Which
looking
we will
around.
not
I'm looking
disclose
around,
for
and
safety reasons.
I'm naked in the shower. It's like, could you possibly be more vulnerable? And I'm hearing voices.
Wait, so was it an audible voice or an internal voice?
It was an internal voice, but that was still scary enough.
Yeah.
I understand.
And
Nobody likes to think
and
about
it's like, okay,
the Lord being with them in the bath.
this country, I've been to this country before. At this point, I'd been to that country twice. And the first time I went, I didn't want to go. And the second time I went, it was under really horrible circumstances. But the second time I went, I did fall in love with the country. And
It's a risk we take.
It's a risk we take.
Yeah.
And I think that's possibly the best part.
I know.
Yeah.
It really is. You go there and you meet the people, and all of a sudden you have this really deep understanding that they are in fact more like us than they are different from us. I'll get into that later, but it's important.
Great.
But I came here and I did a scouting trip in the country and in the city that I would eventually live in, and did a school of strategic missions and moved to the country. So I was there for about 10 months, and I had some sort of a breakdown. Basically, this is what happens when you try to dive into a culture when you aren't settled in yourself and in your identity, which I really wasn't. So I came back to the States. I was treated for, and this was later in 2004. I came back to the States and spent 18 months in therapy. I'm still taking psych meds, antidepressants, for which I am truly grateful. But in that 18 months, I did a lot of heart work, a lot of hard heart work, and banished a few demons. And then in May of 2006, I moved back to my host country and was there for another 11 years.
Wow.
Wow.
It's great that you weren't just totally put off the first time, It's
Oh, no, I'm far too stubborn for that,
well, that's true, actually.
says the man who knows me. But the thing is, I couldn't not go back. The only reason I'm in Tennessee right now is because God told me to be here.
Hmm.
And if God tells me to go back to my host country or to move to a different host country, my bags will be packed, my ticket will be purchased, and I will be gone like a bullet from a gun.
Come on.
That sounds good.
There's no better thing than to be right in the middle of what God wants you to do.
Come
Amen.
on. Come on.
You know, this is 2020. This is a really kind of unpleasant year to be living in America. And I know I'm in the middle of God's will for me, and I'm as happy as I've ever been. I'm not wealthy. I need to have dental work done. I mean, there's all these things that outside people will look at and say, how can you be happy? It's like, dude, I'm in the middle of God's will for myself. This is awesome.
Yeah. Come on.
And it's fun. You know, I mean, most people wouldn't think of this as being fun. It's like it's important and it's dignified and all of these great, fantastic things. And oh my goodness, you're a missionary. It's like, yeah, I'm a person.
Yeah, actually, speaking to that mindset, I was just thinking about before we started recording. There is kind of this idea, which I had coming, and I assume that other people probably have somewhere, but like that you kind of always see fruit, and if you don't see fruit as a missionary, then you're like failing, or like there's kind of this pressure that like there need to be certain results, you know? So I was wondering if you could just share about some challenges you had, or like just kind of some of the harder sides of like doing missions work, and also speak a little bit to that mindset and like what would be a more healthy approach to missions, kind of.
The hardest part of the evangelistic side of missions.
Mm-hmm.
The hardest part of missions is being away from family. Just going to say that out loud. I kind of missed my niece and nephew growing up, and that hurts my heart even now. But from the evangelistic side is knowing that you may not see fruit for years.
Mm-hmm.
I can't honestly claim, and this is going to sound terrible, okay? This is going to sound terrible, but we'll get to that in a hot minute. I can't honestly claim that I led anyone to Christ. I don't think I've said the prayer with anyone. And I can hear all the people out there in podcast land saying, oh my goodness, what kind of missionary is she? She has no salvations to her name. Oh my goodness, God's going to have something to say to her. And the truth of the matter is, if you feel that way about me, that's fine.
Yeah.
I know what my legacy is in Christ. And I know that, maybe I didn't lead people, and maybe I didn't lead people to Christ, but I discipled people who are leading people to Christ.
Come on.
That's great.
I have got former English students from my host country that are active missionaries within their country and without.
She's making
I would
a
call
face.
that success.
Yeah.
You know, I really would, because I'm not doing this for me.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not doing it really for any of the glory that people think is due a missionary. That's not why I do it. I do it because this is God's will for me. And all I have to do is do what he tells me to do, and he will see to the harvest.
Yeah.
And if that means I'm a harvester, great. I'll pick all the fruit you want me to. If that means I water what somebody else has planted, I will water all day long. But it really is about having that intimacy with God. It's about knowing God and knowing that what I do helps make him known.
Yeah.
You know, one of my favorite analogies is doing kitchen work. You know, when you come onto a YWAM base, there's usually somebody in the kitchen who's cooking.
Mm-hmm.
And the thought is, oh, I'm just cooking. Yeah, I'm doing it for Jesus, but I'm not having a big impact. It's like, no, you're having a huge impact.
Yeah.
More than you realize. You are helping young people be healthy. You are discipling them when you speak to them. You're encouraging them. You're praying for them. And these are huge weapons in God's arsenal.
Come on.
And so what? If you're sweeping the floors at your church, that doesn't make you less of a missionary than somebody in the wilds of some jungle trying to reach headhunters, you know?
Yeah.
It just doesn't matter.
Or if you're sweeping the floor at a gas station, for that matter.
Yeah. Are you doing the thing that God wants you to do?
Yep.
And in doing that thing, are you affecting his kingdom? And that's the thing. That is like, if of all the things, using a Michael term, of all the things, that's the thing. I don't see a big fun thing that evangelicals throw around as being a world changer, and maybe not, but I'm really not. I've read the book. I know how this is all going to end.
Yeah.
And us trying to change the world is kind of futile. I'm going to burn for that, aren't I? But I don't see myself as a world changer. I see myself influencing individuals. I want to bring as many individuals into the kingdom as I can, because the kingdom's what I'm building.
Yep.
Right on.
And that's my job.
Yeah.
And if that means writing up staff lists or making schedules or planning retreats or resetting passwords. So these are the things that I'm doing to affect the kingdom now.
Yeah. And
being able to encourage the people on this campus to continue doing what they're doing, however mundane it seems. It's like, this is part of your calling, at least at this moment. Revel in it, enjoy it, see it for what it is, a chance to be intimate with God, a chance to stretch your abilities, to build new skills. I mean, you guys started a podcast.
I sure did.
And that's something. And it's really important.
Well, thank you.
And these are the things that are going to affect the kingdom in ways that we cannot imagine. And just because we can't imagine them doesn't mean they won't happen.
Yeah. And something that strikes me about like what you're saying is, I don't know, because we were talking about it in a meeting the other day, but like the different like parts of the body, you know, and it's interesting because you did spend a long season, being in some sense the hands and the feet and actually going and being kind of what like the support here is for, but then now you're coming into a season where you are doing more of the supporting. Maybe you're a spleen or something, to use the body analogy. But I just think it's interesting that God has like different seasons. Or like when I came on, I worked maintenance for a few years, and now we're doing the podcast and mobile teams or leading schools or whatever, And so there's just different seasons of like, this or that. And then one might be 11 or 12 years of a season. One might be a few months, Yeah.
So. And, and that's really kind of the thing. They are seasons. And it is. It's about wringing the juice out or sucking the marrow out of whatever it is God's giving you to do.
Come on.
To despise any duty that God gives you is, well, I don't know that it's sin. I can't make that call. God can. But I do know it's really not cool.
Yeah.
It's like seriously uncool to despise anything that God gives you to do. A really great example is there was a freezer here that had been unplugged and hadn't been cleaned out properly.
Oh man.
And it
What
had the
happened with
stench
Dippin'
of
Dots
death.
freezers?
The stench of death. There had been meat in there at some point, and there were at that point when we found it, it was full of maggots and all manner of uncleanness.
Oh.
And this Michael and the other Michael cleaned it out for us because the rest of us were literally trying not to vomit.
Bravo, sir.
But
Bravo.
they went at it with a good heart and a great attitude. And while I don't think they had fun, they were at least able to see the humor in it.
Good times.
Yeah.
Good
I don't know
time.
if
There
that's
you go.
the words I would use to describe it, but
Definitely not the words I would use to describe it.
it's
But
not the worst time.
at that point, I was coming in to take charge of the kitchen, and I was so grateful to these men who literally did the nastiest job on campus. I'd rather clean toilets than clean out a freezer full of rot. And they did it, and they did it joyfully. And it's like, okay, this is what the heart of God is like. And it's a great example. It's a great discipleship moment. It's like, hey, you want to know what your leader can do? Your leader has done this most disgusting of jobs. And so you get servant leadership, and all of this stuff ties into God's character. It's all about knowing God and being intimate with God.
So do you want to tell us about, I'm curious about like the day-to-day. So I feel like it's easy for people to be like, oh, you were there for, however long. But having gone on trips myself and really shorter trips to where you're really like just plugging away, knowing that it's a short time. I'm curious as far as how that span of time, much longer stints of time, how that kind of works on a day to day. Because you're more like a marathon than like a sprint,
Oh yeah. Imagine on your marathon, you've got about 30 meters of ankle deep water. That's a short-term outreach.
Yeah.
12 years is like running that marathon in 12 feet of water.
Yeah.
In ankle deep water, you understand wet.
Mm-hmm.
It can be uncomfortable, but it's temporary.
Yeah.
And in a way, it's kind of refreshing. But when you're in it day to day, well, it's just, how to explain this? Every day, I got up, I had coffee, I had breakfast, I checked the news, I checked my email, I walked my dog, I fed my cats, I went to work, I came home, I walked my dog, I did the things that I needed to do every day to survive.
Yeah.
I went grocery shopping. It's the same things I do here, but I did them differently because I had to adjust to that culture. Instead of going to Walmart and picking up groceries for the week, I'd go down to the street market 3, maybe 4 times a week, pick up fresh vegetables, a little bit of meat, whatever, go home and cook my food. I was living in a very large city, and so I took public transportation. In the summertime, I'd ride a little motorcycle, a little 50cc scooter. Nearly got killed on that thing more than once because, let's face it, people in other parts of the world are even worse drivers than they are in Clarksville.
It's the karma mindset.
Must
Fatalistic.
be. And, you shift and adjust in little ways that you don't understand until you come back. And I'm a Yankee living in the South, having been in the entertainment industry, in food service, insurance, teaching English as a second language in a foreign country. My idioculture, the thing that makes me me, is so twisted. And sometimes I offend people with it. I'm far more blunt than... I'm from the Midwest. We're blunt.
That's good. Comes in handy at times.
It
I'm telling
does.
you. Well, I will say that she's blunt, but with good intentions, and like
Always.
you know that her heart is good behind it. So it's like more just like direct and straightforward. Like you know that she's not trying to beat you over the head just for the sake of beating you over the head. She's like,
No, you've usually done something that deserves it.
yeah,
Kidding. I'm kidding. But you know, it's hard for me to adjust. Even now, I've been back almost 3 years, and it's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. I'm really I'm really still part of my host culture in a lot of ways. And I don't know that I'm ever going to get over that. And in a way, I kind of don't. It's like I didn't want to get over being American while I was over there.
yeah,
It's like, okay, how much of this is going to affect my identity and who I am? And it's kind of uncomfortable.
yeah,
It's awesome. It's also it makes relating to people here difficult. Relating to non-missionaries, extremely difficult.
yeah,
Because, and when I get to that point, I just revert back to what I did before I was a missionary and come at it from that angle.
uh-huh.
You know, because that's something they can relate to.
You got 12 years of life that just don't translate. You know,
Yeah.
must be
They really don't.
interesting to navigate.
And you know, it's the little things. You walk down the street and you have everyone saying, "Hello, how are you? Hello, how are you?" And you know that's the only English they remember from school.
Yeah.
And you walk through your life and you know that you're being watched. People, lots of people know who you are. Great example. So the first school I worked at, the PI, we'll just call it that, was closing. So I went looking for another job, and I got a job with another company, WSE. And I had just started. There are a lot of great stories about my starting at WSE, but this one's the scariest. So one day, the human resources girl at our center came to me and said, "The police want to talk to you."
Uh-oh.
Okay, when? Tomorrow. Can you come at 10? Sure. Do you want to meet me here? You want me to meet me there? It's like, meet me here. So we went, and we sat in this dingy little office, and the officer who spoke to me spoke English, and he said, you used to work at PI, is that right? Yes, it is. So you are a Christian? Yes, I am. You know you are not supposed to tell people about being Christian, about Jesus, right? I would never tell people about Jesus in the classroom. It's inappropriate. End of the discussion. One must be very careful about the way one says things. It may be a sin of omission. I'll have to answer for that someday. But I didn't tell people about Jesus in the classroom unless it was a culturally significant event, like the Easter English Corner or the Christmas English Corner or the Halloween English Corner. Mm-hmm. These were times where Christianity had a major effect on Western culture, so I could talk about it then. If you have any other questions, please see me after class. And that's what I did. And so I was able to reach between 20 and 60 people at any given English Corner about this is what we believe. And there were monitors in my classrooms. There were people there who were reporting to the police. And some of them were just cops who were trying to learn English. You know, we did have a few of those. In fact, I'm pretty sure that one of my dearest friends was a monitor. I don't know that for sure, but I'm guessing.
Oh, so they're on the down low.
Yes.
I see.
Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. In school, like in high school or college, it's a big deal. That means that they've given you responsibility and, you know, power.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But out there when you're trying to be subtle, yeah. And it was totally cool. There was nothing in my house that indicated that I was other than Christian. And it's all in the way you handle things. You know, I would have Bible studies at my house disguised as meals. We'd all get together, we'd cook, we'd talk, we'd laugh, we'd discuss the Bible. Our door was never knocked on at that point, but if somebody had, all they would see is a bunch of people eating. And it's like, yeah, dinner, want some?
Yeah.
Come on in.
And you get used to the police knocking on your door a couple of times a year to check your registration, to make sure everything's kosher. And that's just what life was like, and you get used to that. The fact that I haven't had a cop knock on my door in 3 years is kind of disconcerting.
I can call one for you. No, I'm just
That's okay. That's okay. Now, she just needs a cop to come knock on her door to make sure that her passport's okay. That's all she needs.
I'll make sure she has donuts ready. I would appreciate a good donut.
I'm sure you would. I'm sure you would. But yeah, and these are the things that, you know, and you go and you realize there are certain truths about living in other countries. My neighborhood had a large Muslim population, and my butcher was Muslim. Like the guy I bought my beef and lamb from. And, of course, I would go to a different shop on a different block to buy pork because I didn't want to offend him. And there were different people I would buy vegetables from and fruit from, and you get to develop these relationships with your vendors.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and the last time I went to my butcher, it was like, I'm so sorry. This is in his language, not mine. I'm so sorry. I'm leaving for America. I'm moving house. And he had this look on his face. There was sadness in his eyes. You know, I have a friend who's stateside again, but we were roommates for a long time, and when she moved to a different city, he would ask me about her. And like all of the Westerners in that neighborhood would buy meat from him because of the relationship I'd built with him.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And so, you know, I never got a chance to share the gospel with him. My language was never good enough.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I really regret. You know, that I didn't have a chance to cross that cultural bridge. But now I'm homesick.
I understand.
It's you know, and 3 years into living in my host country, I would think about America and get homesick.
Yeah.
And there would be times when I'm walking, even as late as my last month in my host country, I'd walk down the street and it would suddenly strike me like, I am living in this country.
Yeah.
This is so cool.
If somebody was feeling a stir and a call to greater missions and potentially to, you know, for like an extended period of time, what would you say to them on this end? If there was like fresh Pat who is hearing the call and is like, I'm going to go, and you'd be like, here's a piece of advice.
Pray harder.
Yeah.
And don't pray alone. Get people whose walk you trust. In 2006, when I went back after having had my breakdown, I talked to 7 different people, and I asked them particular questions. And the last one was, do you think I'm ready to go back? And they didn't know the deal I'd made with God, because I was very, very scared, terrified. I was afraid that if I went back, I might lose my mind again. I was really genuinely terrified. And it's like, okay, unless these people all agree, I'm not going back. And I didn't tell them that.
Yeah.
And when they all agreed, I made arrangements to go back.
Mm.
But until they all agreed that it was safe, I wasn't going.
Yeah.
And it included my pastor at home. It included my parents. It included my leadership here. It included my therapist.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a lot of people whose knowledge and understanding of who God is, they needed to agree without knowing they were agreeing with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And God did that for me, to put my heart at rest. And 11 years later, as I'm getting ready to come home, it's like I'm exhausted, but I still feel healthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was awesome.
Wow.
So good.
Right on.
So yeah, make sure you've got a good, if this sounds like something God's calling you to do, get yourself a prayer group. Get a few dedicated warriors on your side, praying for you and with you regularly.
Come on. Good general life practice.
Good general life practice. But even more important in this line of work,
Yeah.
you need warriors at your back. For the Gulf War, for every one person in the field, it took 100 people in support.
Wow.
If you look at World War II and you look at the propaganda, the home front, the women who had given up housekeeping to go work in the factory so that the men could go fight,
Yeah.
these people were important and they were celebrated. Because if you don't have somebody tooling propeller shafts, you don't have people building airplanes, and you don't have the support you need for your frontline fighters.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really very, very important to build up a home front. Even in the work we're doing here on campus, the people in our home churches, we need to have them praying for us.
Yep.
We need to have them understanding that what we're doing has eternal implications, and that we want them involved in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it? Paul says, we don't fight against flesh and blood, but
It's principalities and
Powers and principalities. Yeah, and that's true. It's very true. So yeah, for the new kid, and build those relationships. Build as many relationships as you can with good, solid Christian people, because they're the people that when you make the move, you're going to be tapping them for support.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean to be crass about it, but there's a truth that we as individuals, as a ministry, we need the financial support of individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. For a time when I was overseas, I was making money, just like Paul did when he was making tents. There are times when we need to support ourselves, and there are times when we need to be supported. And knowing when those times are is important.
Yeah.
And having and being shameless about asking,
Mm-hmm.
because that's a big roadblock. Is that it's shameful to ask people for stuff. No, not really.
Capitalism.
yeah, Western mindsets.
Woot woot.
Raise the roof.
On that note, if you just throw out a little plug here, if you want to support Pat, her ministry,
yeah.
if you want to support our ministry we're doing in general, if you want to support some long-term overseas people, then just email us at podcast@ywamnashville.org, and we can get you connected to who you need to be connected to make that happen.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this, you do not know the impact you're having. You really don't. Think about it. Do you think Peter understood the impact he was having? Do you think Paul did? Paul spoke to thousands of people, and now there are approximately 3 billion Christians in the world.
Wow.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
You don't know the
It's
impact
crazy.
you're having.
Yep.
And I mean, I know for me, probably for you even more so, but when we've been on our like little trips or even being here and somebody's like, "Hey, I thought of you. Here's $20 or something." Like that can go a long way and really like provide a lot of morale boost,
Yeah,
you know.
even emotionally.
Yeah. You're like, somebody
didn't you
cares?
have- what was that one supporter you had who was like a college student?
Oh yeah.
Right.
So one of my favorite people was a DTS student a couple DTSs ago. He goes to college and stuff and supports us like $14 and some change, and like knowing him and like where he's at, and then he's having to pay to go to this like nice college and do a bunch of stuff, and he was like, "This is what I can give," and I was like, honestly, this means more. It's like the widow thing that Jesus talks about. Like, it means more to me, and on a heart level than people who have like full jobs and are giving some percentage out of that.
I had a friend who, while I was making money, and I was supporting them.
Mm.
And now we're both stateside, and they're supporting me.
So it goes around,
This
comes
is
around.
relationship. It's what it
It
is.
is.
Yeah, relationship.
It is. And it's awesome.
Which is also something I love about YWAM. If you, even just going through the discipleship training school, like, you have a whole network of relationships that open up. If you meet somebody in another country somewhere and you're like, or even here, and you're like, "Oh, I'm a YWAMer," which is what we refer to ourselves as, and you're a YWAMer, like, there's immediately connection. Like,
Yeah.
it
It
so
makes
good.
a huge difference.
Yeah.
A huge difference.
It's crazy.
All right.
But
I think
anyways,
just about wraps up our main topic discussion.
yeah, we could talk forever on that stuff.
As per the usual, however, I have a few fun questions
Dun, dun,
hand
dun.
selected for Pat. You're going to get a kick out of this first one, which I didn't even know I was going to ask her. But what's the dumbest way you've been injured? Get ready, guys.
Oh, my goodness. There are so many. There was the bouncing on my bed and hitting the windowsill and cutting my head open.
Ooh.
Ouch.
I was 4. But by far the stupidest was the time I ran over myself with my own car because of a grasshopper.
Why don't you elaborate on that just a little bit? Not too much, but
I was on my way to work and I stopped on this incline to wipe a grasshopper that had flown in my window off of my shirt. And I got out of the car and I was standing between the car door and the body of the car. I flicked the bug off and I went to turn off the car, but the car wasn't in park and the car dragged me down the driveway.
oh man, it's terrible, but
Bruised
it's one of Pat's favorite
and
stories
bleeding. Well, when you tell
Oh,
it the
man.
long way, it's even funnier.
to tell. Yeah.
Bruised, bleeding, broke 4 ribs, scraped up my face. Oddly enough, as scraped up as my face was, no broken bones. My sunglasses had a little scratch on one lens. Considering I looked like somebody had rubbed my face with sandpaper, I thought I was doing pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I spent about a week in the hospital, 3 days, and then my friends here at YWAM Nashville took care of me and made sure that I had everything I needed. They fed me and, helped me. We had one girl who helped me get to the bathroom. She slept on my floor for 3 nights until I could get in and out of my chair I was sleeping in by myself.
That's so sweet.
Oh, yeah. I will never forget that.
Yeah. It's probably only a good story for you because of like how well people took care of you. I wasn't here at the time, but
And it turned out well.
yeah,
We actually walked up
ended well.
on
most
that, like, just after. Like, we got home from the store or something, and we were like, why is Pat's car in the bush over there?
Oh, man.
And then I saw you sitting over there, and I was almost like, hey, Pat, I think you parked it wrong. And then, like, you just kind of had this look on your face, like, kind of dazed. And I was like, maybe I won't. And then somebody else was there and was like, yeah, there was kind of an accident. And I don't know. Then a few minutes later, the ambulance stuff showed up. But I was like, I'll save the joke for later. I don't know how, like, seriously injured
at
we
that
are.
moment, I probably wouldn't have caught it.
Yeah.
I fully caught the humor of what had happened.
Yeah.
I actually caught it while I was being run down by my car. I remember thinking very clearly an expletive as I hit the pavement with my face.
Yeah.
So there
You're
you
like,
go.
Oh, well, this is happening.
Kind
So,
of.
She's okay.
I'm
And
okay.
Now
I'm fine.
she can tell people.
I can
that
tell people it's
she
been.
ran over herself with her own car
And
Yeah.
because she was attacked by a grasshopper.
the fire department people were there, and they were talking, and they were like in pretty good moods actually, because they were like, I guess this happens semi-regularly enough, because they were like,
What?
normally
Really?
they were like, normally we get calls like this, and it's just a cleanup job.
Yeah,
So they were
well,
like-
mostly when that happens, I think it's people get run over by the tires.
Yeah.
For me, it was just the door, and the
Mhm.
door wrinkled. It wrinkled like tinfoil.
Wow.
Oh, boy.
But because it was the door, I wasn't getting the full weight of the car.
Mm-hmm.
It was bad enough to break 4 ribs and leave some nasty bruises on my back.
Yeah.
And it looked like a tire mark on my back because of the way it happened. But
Yeah.
if it had actually been the wheel, it would have killed me or paralyzed me. The first thing I did when I realized that I had stopped moving was to check and make sure I could move. Like wiggling the toes was the first thing I did.
Yeah.
And when I figured that out, it was like, how deep can I breathe? Not very. And then it was like calling out for help.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Right on.
Well, I'm glad
The
that
Lord
you're
took
okay.
care of you.
and
That's
you're-
good.
Yeah.
In more ways than one.
That's good.
More ways than one. God took care of the bill.
Yeah.
Come on.
So, closing remarks. Don't forget, there's a DTS starting September 20th here at YWAM Nashville. We'd love to have you come be a part of that. Young, old, Jew, Greek, slave, free, anyone. Just come on. And
Male, female.
we'll see you here.
Dude, you will just. It's amazing.
It is amazing.
Come on.
It's amazing.
Oh, and that's I don't remember if we said what the DTS stands for, but that's Discipleship Training School.
Yep.
Which is a 5-month school, 3 months of hanging out here, living in community, getting teachings.
And
Keep going.
there's another one in the spring as well.
Yep.
I don't know when that's starting, but
2 to 3 months of outreach. And that's pretty much it.
all right. Thanks for coming, Pat. It's been great
Happy to
having
do
you here.
it. Anytime.
Yeah.
I would love to come sit and have some theological discussion with you boys.
Oh
Hey.
yeah, that'd be great.
Well, tune in next week at 5:30 p.m.
Yep. See you laters,
Peace and love.
alligators.